Hi, Kevin Coop here, and this is FaceTime with the Content Guy. So there was a story in the New York Times this week that was sort of interesting because basically it said while there have been a lot of predictions about the death of physical books, hardcovers, paperbacks, things like that, basically it hasn't happened, at least not on schedule. The digital apocalypse that people were seeing, it's not happening exactly at the same rate that a lot of people thought. Basically, it said that analysts, a lot of analysts thought that ebooks would, the sale of ebooks would basically outpace the sale of traditional books by this year. But that hasn't happened because the rate of growth really has slowed for ebooks a little bit. In fact, the story said there are signs that some ebook adopters are returning to print or are at least becoming hybrid readers. Ebook sales fell by 10% in the first 5 months of this year, according to the Association of American Publishers. And digital books accounted last year for around 20% of the market, roughly the same as they did a few years ago. So they're not seeing the kind of growth they expected. Now, what this may mean is that perhaps books are not going to be subject to the same disruption that things like movies and television and music have felt because of technology, at least not at the same kind of pace. And in fact, the American Booksellers Association says that the number of independent bookstores in this country actually increased last year, which is really remarkable. Now, I think this is, something of a resurrection. I think that's what we can call it that. We can be safe with that. At the same time, there was also a story in the Washington Post this week that basically talked about the debate that's taking place in the marketplace about the role of libraries. That, libraries, a lot of people think they should definitely move from just books and become more community centers, offering a lot more services. Some people don't, and some people think they ought to stay exactly the same. Some people are undecided. It was kind of a split decision, if you will. And basically, this is based on a Pew study. And what they said is that it really depends to a great degree on who the citizens are. That, the traditional services are valued by some citizens, but not by others. And they have to figure out libraries have to figure out what space they're going to fill. And basically, when I look at both of these stories, what it says to me is that we really have to come to grips with one basic fact. There's no such thing as one size fits all. Just there's no single consumer. There's no single demographic. The fact of the matter is things are different depending on who you are, where you live, how you live your life. Marketers of products can't come up with a one-size-fits-all solution because consumers are not one-size-fits-all. Now, listen, when it comes to reading, I am a huge fan of my iPad. This is the original iPad, and I read books all the time on the Kindle application on this iPad. It's terrific. But to a certain extent, it does sort of depend on my schedule. If I'm traveling a lot, I tend to use this more because I don't want to carry my books with me. But it so happens that, over the last few months, or last month or so, I guess, I've actually been reading regular hardcover books. Now, to a certain extent, this is because these are authors that I really, really like, and they're genres that I really like, and so I tend to collect those books in a different kind of way. I impute a certain kind of value to them that I might not to other books that I'd be more willing to read on my iPad. I just think it depends, right? It depends on the circumstances. And the thing is, listen, is there a revolution taking place? Absolutely. But revolutions don't take place in neat packages, and they don't take place in straight lines. They tend to be kind of messy. That's what disruption is all about. That's in some ways makes revolutions even more impactful than they might seem otherwise. Listen, and again, with libraries, I think it's really important not to paint with a broad brush. Some communities are going to need traditional libraries. Some communities are going to need libraries that offer different and more kinds of services. It really depends on what kind of community it is, where the community is, who's in the community that the library is trying to serve. And here's the one thing you do know, right? The libraries that need to offer more services are not going to survive if they don't offer more services. It's that simple. You have to be relevant. You have to be appropriate. It's the one thing you can absolutely take to the bank. In any business, whether you're a library, a bookstore, whatever it happens to be, if you don't evolve when evolution is called for, inevitably you're going to die. So what about the digital apocalypse? Who knows? But here's the one thing I do know. I love the smell of disruption in the morning. It smells to me like victory. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this Thursday morning, and as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.